Wisconsin. Jane Van there in for Kristen Bry, joined by Greg Bach on the board, Dominic Salvia in studio, my co-host on Tuesdays, and that music, of course, the finest walk-up music for this person. From the Recombobulation Area, it is the one and only Dan Shafer. Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Hey, Dan.
Good morning, Jane. Good morning, Dom. Good morning, Greg. Thanks so much for having me on. Always appreciate the wonderful introduction on Ask Us.
Not that I'm competitive at all, Dan, but
certainly not. Yeah.
So we were talking about Matty Boy making his move. Matt Gaetz late yesterday decided to try to get rid of Speaking Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, he's it's all circus with Matt Gaetz, right? It's this whole thing is just a circus. But I just wanted to, since you were on the topic, I wanted to share a brief Matt Gaetz story since when I was covering the Milwaukee debate about a month ago, Matt Gaetz was one of the Trump surrogates who made the trip to Milwaukee. Trump himself, of course, didn't make the trip.
Sure.
But Matt Gaetz was there, and as I was covering, I was covering the Democratic, kind of press conference response to the debate, and Matt Gaetz was walking through the lobby of the hotel and was signing Trump signs. There was a group of Trump sign people who were walking through the hotel as the Democrats were coming in and leaving and all that. And so he stopped and signed a few of these. What I was surprised by, and this has no bearing on, anything political or whatever, I was surprised that Matt Gaetz was kind of shorter than I expected. He always looks kind of tall. Maybe that's just him standing next to Jim Jordan or whatever.
Ooh, zing.
But I was surprised to be. I'm about 6 foot flat, and I'm taller than Matt Gaetz, which I expected him. Maybe it's the hair. I don't know what it is, but Matt Gaetz not that tall. That's my incisive on the ground, reporting take from running into Matt Gaetz at the Hyatt lobby before the Milwaukee debate.
Truly valuable details, Dan Shafer.
Good to know, man.
I think it's absolutely critical that the public know this, and I think it's his hair. I think his hair as like a foot.
And the forehead.
And
yes, that too. If we're judging,
if we're going to be judgy.
I'm probably still looking up at the man.
Well, now, big news in statewide politics, in Wisconsin politics, because Representative Christina Shanklin, we were on the air, so I assume she has made her announcement by now.
Yeah, I believe she's made the announcement official. There were reports yesterday from WisPolitics and the Journal Sentinel that Katrina Shanklin is going to be running for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. I think this is a pretty big deal. I think this is a big deal for that race. Big deal for, just the larger landscape of Democrats trying to win back the House. And, there's been a number of candidates who have entered the race on the Democratic side to potentially challenge Derek Van Orden. Rebecca Cook has been running for a while. She ran a strong campaign in 2020, coming in 2nd place in that primary to Brad Pfaff. But I really think Katrina Shanklin's candidacy is one to watch because, as longtime Recombobulation Area readers will know, I preview all 100 and some races on the ballot in the Wisconsin State Legislature. There aren't that many competitive races given the gerrymandering of the state legislature.
Right.
But one that Republicans targeted in the last election cycle was Katrina Shanklin's seat. She represents Stevens Point. That is an area that has been, central Wisconsin has been trending a little bit red in the last couple of election cycles. So Republicans circled that one. They tried to flip her seat. Well, the opposite happened. She won by 11 points in 2020. And as they were targeting her, trying to flip her seat, she won by a 15-point margin in her district.
Wow.
In the Stevens Point area. So clearly, she has some skill at the ballot box as a campaigner. And I wrote in my recap of the midterm elections for the state legislature that she was perhaps the biggest winner of anyone in the state legislature. So I think, and this is a district that Biden has won, but is in the single digits, so this is the fact that she is putting up double-digit margins to win re-election. She's been in the state assembly for about a decade. She has spent some time on joint finance. She's spent some time in leadership. And so I really think this is going to be a potentially a very strong challenge in the primary. And, I think she is somebody who could potentially beat Derek Van Orden.
But winning by 15 points in Wisconsin is huge.
Yeah, and especially in this type of district, Stevens Point is kind of one of those swingier regions, one of these blue cities in a, maybe a redder county, whatever it might be. But the fact that she is not only winning, but winning by double digits, I really think speaks to her, ability to take that next step and not just run for a very competitive assembly seat, but run for Congress as well. And I saw that the campaign manager, or I'm not exactly sure what role he's going to have there, but the person who's going to be working with her on this campaign was the guy who ran Janet Protasewicz's campaign.
Oh,
so I think that just adds to the nature of how formidable her candidacy could be in that third congressional district.
do you believe that Van Orden is beatable?
I think he is. I think this is a district that voted, I think it was about 4% favored Trump in the 2020 election. But Van Orden, he had a lot of support of the National Party when he was running after Ron Kind retired, to flip that seat for the Republicans. And Democrats basically abandoned that seat, put no national money from the DCCC to back Brad Pfaff. And that race ended up being a lot closer than a lot of people projected. And if you look at, the map from when Janet Protasewicz won, a little bit, aspects of the map from when Tony Evers won, Tammy Baldwin winning in 2018, that Western Wisconsin can really be a swing part of the state, and Democrats can win there. And I think, Shankland, with the experience she has, and the results that she has shown in her district, really speaks to the ability to run in this larger congressional race.
Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation Area. So now we have Katrina Shankland, Rebecca Cook, Tara Johnson also, and Aaron Knights, I guess a Harvard Law School student, also seeking. That's 4 folks. 3 of the 4, Dan, are women. Is there anything to read into that?
Well, it sure seems like there's been a big gender gap in Wisconsin politics, and it has been growing wider and wider in recent years. Is that a fair assessment over there, Jane?
I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
Yeah. So I do think women have done well in Wisconsin, particularly in that district. I mentioned Protasewicz and Tammy Baldwin, a number of the Rebecca Dallett, and I'm blanking on the other Wisconsin Supreme Court justice's name at the moment, but women have done well there, and I think that it does not seem like a coincidence that the 3 top candidates. I think the Aaron Knights is kind of a also ran type of candidate in this race, but yeah, I think that is interesting.
Well, and I'm curious too, because I would think that there would be all kinds of things to work with for campaign ads for all of the Democratic challengers to Derek Van Orden. You can just look at his Wikipedia page and pick out things that you would like to highlight. He was at the January 6th Stop the Steal rally. He was present as the Capitol of the United States was under attack on January 6th. The incident at the library where he confronted a teenage library worker pretty aggressively about some LGBTQ books that were in the library. He was arrested in August of 2021 at the Eastern Iowa Airport in Cedar Rapids, trying to carry a fully loaded Sauer handgun through security, where he initially pleaded not guilty, later waived his rights and pleaded guilty. He had to pay fines and complete a gun safety program, but this was all known before he was elected. So I guess maybe the one they could focus on, and I really wish they would release the videotape of him yelling at the Senate pages, apparently after having a pretty drunken evening with a bunch of his constituents at his office, to get off the floor and swearing at them and all those things. If we could just get access to that footage, I think that would just be fun.
Release the Senate page cut.
Well, it's also one of those stories that breaks through. There's so many of these different little, if you're really paying attention to the nuance of the House, so there could be all these different things. But that was a story. Derek Van Orden potentially drunkenly yelling at a bunch of kids. That story broke through, and I think Rebecca Cook was doing a lot of fundraising off of that, and I think that is going to be one of those moments that is going to end up in one of those Democratic attack ads on the airwaves next year. So, I think he's vulnerable. We don't know exactly what the maps might look like for that district. I think the focus on making any changes to the maps have been on the state legislature more than Congress, and I think rightly so. But this has been the most competitive congressional district in the state for some time. And Derek Van Orden, I saw him in a video recently with Marjorie Taylor Greene too. He's just like, seems like that wing of the House Republicans as well. I think there's going to be a lot to go after with him for the Democrats. And I think, candidate like Katrina Shankland, who has a lot of like experience as a legislator on a lot of key issues, is gonna be a factor.
Well, and the penchant for Van Orden to go after young adults, older kids, young adults. You're talking about teenagers, 17-year-old librarian. And not only did he get in her face and yell at her, he checked out all the LGBTQ books he didn't like, so nobody else could get them. What? And then eventually apparently brought them back. The same thing with the Senate pages. These are 16, 17-year-old kids, man.
This is an unhinged guy. Like, he is just off the deep end. And there's, the fact that he's won this race and the Democrats didn't want to really put any funds against him was such a misfire to begin with. And hopefully they right that wrong. And whoever, emerges from this primary gets the Brinks truck backed up to help him out and flip that district back.
And I still don't understand that, Dan. I don't understand why the DCCC just dropped that ball and essentially let the Republicans take that seat. That's really disappointing and extraordinarily short-sighted.
Well, and we saw what investing in a statewide race can make an impact in some of those cities. You saw the lines from like UW Eau Claire during the spring election this year. Eau Claire, La Crosse, Stevens Point. These are places that are really going to turn out for Democrats, I think, in the next election cycle. And if the national party can give that a boost, that can make a difference in statewide races too. That can make a difference in, for Tammy Baldwin, for Joe Biden, all the way, you invest at the bottom of the ticket, it's going to make an impact at the top of it too. So I think that's hopefully that's something that they do there.
Well, it's going to be interesting going forward, and we can take one real quick call. We have Bill from Recombobulation on the phone. We always love to hear from Bill. Bill, we got about 2 minutes left. What do you want to say?
Okay, here goes. You guys have too much fun on the radio. I wish I was part of it. But here's what you ought to do. You ought to start nominating these guys for MVP for the crazy team, the Super Bowl team. There are so many characters in the far right that need to have some kind of a claim of the number one crazy in the country or whatever. It's really interesting how you put humor with something that could drive a person crazy with this nonsense that goes on in the country, but you use humor to work it through. So I don't know if that has any bearing, but if you're going to have a goat, I'll send you some nominees.
Goat of the crazies, Bill. Ooh, that'd be a tough competition, and unfortunately,
that'd be a fun bracket.
It really would.
A lot of people eligible.
But I think the winner would be delighted. I think the winner would be delighted to be the number one in the crazy caucus. Bill from Recombobulation, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. You can always check in 844-967-2789. Dan Shafer is here as we recombobulate. We will be right back after the break. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Mattner in for Kristen Bry, who is home with baby Francis Louise. And Greg Bach is on the board. My Tuesday co-host Dominic Salvia is here from Devil's Advocates. Catch him later today, along with Mike Crute at 4 to 6 on the complete Civic Media Radio Network. And then Dan Shafer is here from the Recombobulation Area. Dan, have you seen any pictures of little Frankie Lou yet?
I sure have. I'm excited for them. Yeah,
Isn't
absolutely.
she adorable?
Yeah,
she sent Greg and I a picture of the baby after yesterday's show, and she looked really not happy. I mean, she's like 4 days old, and she was there was attitude coming from that little munchkin. And
Shocking.
I said, "What, did she not like the show? Did she listen to the show and she's not happy with the show? What's going on?" Anyway,
Maybe she's worked up by whatever Republicans are doing.
That's
you know,
right.
I'm
That's
sure.
right.
I'm sure that's what it was.
Really dialed into the news, I'm sure.
Definitely. Well, if she's Kristen and Mike's kid, so she's going to be on top of things. We're going to switch gears a little bit. First, I guess we'll take a phone call from Sharky from Racine at 8. No, okay. Thank you. Never mind. We're going to move on to the Bucks. Dan Shafer
The
is
Bucks.
a huge Bucks fan, and there was big Bucks news this week. And I have to say, I love so much that he picked the number 0. It just makes me happy. It just makes me, I don't know why, but I just love that he's going to be 0.
Damian Lillard, he's been number 0 his whole career in Portland.
Oh, has he really?
0 with the Bucks. You know, he has this kind of underdog mentality where he's counted out. He went to a small college, not one of the major schools or anything like that. And I think that from Damian Lillard joining the Milwaukee Bucks as number 0, having that underdog mentality, I think that's going to be a perfect fit with the Bucks in Milwaukee. You know, being the small market team, trying to hang with the big dogs. But yeah, I'm super excited about this trade for the Bucks. I was absolutely blindsided by it last week. Did not see this one coming at all.
Dan, just to let you know, I told them last week when this happened, when I went to the open mic that day. So it happened last Wednesday. I went to the open mic at the Laughing Tap, and the people in the room were like clapping, hugging, and just like, it's like they had won another championship. They were so excited.
Well, there have been a number of times over the years. I of course write a weekly political opinion column, but there have been 3 times where I've broken from that, where I've like, all right, I've got to write about this Bucks thing. So it was the Damian Lillard trade last week. It was when Giannis signed the Supermax to stay in Milwaukee, and it was when the Bucks won the finals. So if that gives you an indicator of the magnitude of what this trade means, all summer everybody thought Damian Lillard was going to be headed to Miami. The Bucks come in out of nowhere, make this trade, and now the Bucks have 2 of the 10 best players in the NBA, Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. I think this is going to be an extraordinarily exciting team to watch. I was in the Deer District on Saturday for the welcome rally to bring, Damian Lillard landed and came straight to the arena with his family. They had 5,000 people packing the Deer District. It felt like we were back in that playoff run from a couple years ago. The energy and excitement in the city was just off the charts. It was something else.
Dan, it is great to see that energy, and I will miss Holiday. But what's your sense, man? The drama around the trade. Jimmy Butler from the Heat apparently casting some shade, talking about, hey, there's some interference, whatever, talking when they weren't supposed to be. I don't pay as much attention as you two, Dan. What do you know about that side of it?
Well, it seems like the Heat are just a little bit salty that they missed out on their guy, all year, Damian Lillard was saying he wanted to go to the Heat. He wanted to, join forces with Jimmy Butler and the rest of the team there. They'd never had a good trade offer. And so Portland just kept saying no to their offer. And they just never had the pieces to make it work. And like you mentioned, the Bucks had to part with Drew Holiday to make this one happen. We will, of course, miss him in Milwaukee, and his jersey will be going in the rafters when the time comes. But I think between the Heat being salty over that deal, between Drew Holiday going to Boston, it's going to be quite the year with the Bucks, the Heat, and the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. The rivalries just got another, added some fuel to those rivalries a little bit. That's for sure. So it's going to be a really fun year.
And Giannis seems really excited about this. And I think, didn't he say this week that he very much wants to end his NBA career with the Bucks, provided that they really want to win? And this has kind of given him more confidence that that's what they want.
It seems like they're responding to Giannis's wishes. They're making moves to try to win now.
Yeah, Giannis had been dialing up the pressure on the organization this summer and saying that, he would want to stay in Milwaukee only if they remained competitive. And, obviously a move like this, when you're trading for, one of the 10 best players in the NBA, one of the best scorers of his generation, a guy who's under contract for at least 3 more years in Milwaukee too, I think that certainly increases the odds that Giannis signs that next contract and stays in Milwaukee. And, his comments from Media Day yesterday, he all but said that this is going to lead to him, signing another deal in Milwaukee. So, hey, we're going to have a finals contender in Milwaukee for the foreseeable future, which, as a longtime Bucks fan, watching years and years and decades of mediocrity, I still can't quite wrap my head around it. Frankly, it is still a little bit discombobulating that this is like
branding
of this era.
I don't doubt that at all. Speaking of recombobulating, how can people find your award-winning column, Dan Shafer?
Well, you can, of course, find me on Twitter at Dan R. Shafer, where I occasionally tweet about things other than the Milwaukee Bucks. But you can also find my work at the Recombobulation Area.news, Recombobulation Area on Substack.
It's $5, right? $5 a month?
$5 a month. I know Jane's a subscriber. How about you, Greg? Are you on there yet?
I just paid off some credit cards, so look forward to that. No pressure, Dan. Thanks a lot.
Well, and one more.
Sorry, putting you on the spot.
One more Giannis thing. I think now that he's met Bratz, I think we've locked him up for good.
There's
Once
no way
you've had a Brat in Milwaukee, you're never leaving, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. He's locked in now, and hopefully it's going to be a great season.
Hey, Dan, real quick, when is the next deal? When is Giannis's contract up? When does it all go down?
So he is signed for the next 2 years, but he is eligible to sign an extension now. But he said during the media day yesterday that it makes the most sense for him financially to sign that extension next year. So I think there will be a little consternation about, why is he waiting to sign it? It makes money. He's going to make money next year if he signs it. So
Dan Shafer, our guest from the Recombobulation Area. Thanks so much, Dan. We will see you next Tuesday. Stay close. Top of the hour news is coming up next. This is As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Thanks, Dan.
thank you.